My dad's new wife made me sign a contract to live in my own house, but Clause 7 just destroyed her life. Hi Reddit. I 18F. Need to know if I'm losing my mind or if my stepfamily is engaged in the most elaborate gaslighting campaign imaginable. Some background is necessary, and it's a wild ride that starts not with my stepmother, but with the brilliant, formidable woman who was my mother. My mom, Sarah, wasn't just a parent. She was my architect, my mentor, my confidant. She had a mind that worked in code and algorithms, seeing the world as a series of solvable problems. This talent allowed her to build Ether Solutions, a software company that specialized in bespoke security and data management systems for Fortune 500 companies. She was the brain. My dad, Mark, was, as she lovingly teased him, the heart. He was a talented illustrator who handled the company's branding and marketing, but his true passion was his canvas, large abstract paintings that filled our home with color. Our life was a perfect, if unconventional, balance of logic and art. Our house was a testament to my mother's vision. She had inherited a large plot of land from her parents and designed the entire structure herself. It was a modern masterpiece of glass and steel, nestled in the woods, yet filled with the warmth of my father's art. The master bedroom was her sanctuary, a glass-walled room overlooking a dense grove of oak trees, filled with books on everything from quantum physics to ancient mythology. It was our favorite place to talk for hours. The diagnosis of pancreatic cancer was a bolt from the blue. The strongest person I knew was suddenly, terrifyingly fragile. The 18-month battle that followed stripped her of her strength but never her sharpness. 2 weeks before she passed, she called me to her bedside. The room was quiet, filled with the soft beeping of medical equipment that had become our new normal. "Ella," she whispered, her voice a thin thread of its former self. She gripped my hand with a surprising strength. "Listen to me carefully. Your father. I love him deeply, but his heart is his greatest weakness. He needs to be needed, to be loved. He's vulnerable. I need to know you will be safe no matter what." She gestured weakly to her lawyer, Mr. Sterling, who was standing solemnly by the door. He handed her a thick, legal-sized envelope. "This is my will. I've left you a copy. The house, the land, it's all yours. Unconditionally." She explained the terms. The property was placed in a trust, managed by Mr. Sterling until I turned 18. My father had a life estate, meaning he could live there for the rest of his life if he wished, but the ownership was irrevocably mine. "This was my parents' land," she said, her eyes boring into mine. "I built this house for our family, for you. Never let anyone make you feel like a guest in your home. Promise me." I promised, my tears dripping onto the crisp envelope. It felt less like an inheritance and more like a shield. The first year after her death was a fog of grief. My dad was a ghost, his paints gathering dust, the canvases blank. The vibrant house felt like a museum dedicated to a lost civilization. Then he met Chelsea at a gallery opening. She was a curator, a woman with a dazzling smile and an opinion on everything. She was the antithesis of my quiet, intellectual mother, loud, socially brilliant, and fiercely ambitious. First I was grateful. He pulled my dad out of his despair. He started smiling again, even laughing. But her brightness felt invasive, like stadium lights switched on in a cozy room. Their wedding, just 6 months later, was a lavish affair that felt entirely wrong. Chelsea moved in, and with her came her children. Dean, 17, a sullen boy with a practiced sneer who treated the world with contempt, and Nora, 14, a miniature version of her mother, whose sweet smile never quite reached her cold, observant eyes. The transformation of our home began immediately. My mother's carefully curated minimalist aesthetic was assaulted by Chelsea's love for Baroque gold frames, velvet upholstery, and clashing colors. She called it adding life. I called it a hostile takeover. The first major battle was over the master bedroom. We were having a stilted family dinner. Chelsea, sipping her wine, said, "Ella, honey, we need to talk about the bedrooms. The master suite. It's time for a change." The energy in there is so heavy, all that sickness. It's not healthy for any of us. We're going to move into the guest suite and Dean will take the master. A growing boy needs his space for his music. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. My mother's room, her sanctuary, her final resting place in our memories, was being offered up like a prize. My dad stared at his plate, his shoulders tense. "That's not happening," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "That was my mom's room. And this is my house." Chelsea's smile tightened. "What a strange thing to say, sweetie. This is our family's home." "I mean it literally," I replied, pushing back my chair. "My mom left the house to me. In a trust. The deed is in my name." The silence that followed was profound. Dean snorted. Nora looked fascinated, like a scientist observing a chemical reaction. Chelsea's smile finally vanished, replaced by a mask of cold fury. My dad finally looked up, his eyes pleading. "Ella, please. That's just a legal detail. This is our home. We're a family." The argument that erupted was brutal. Chelsea accused me of being selfish, of clinging to the past, of trying to destroy the new family my dad was trying to build. She cried, loud, theatrical sobs, about how hard she was trying and how I was throwing it back in her face. My dad, caught in the crossfire, crumbled. He didn't defend me, he just begged for peace. The next day he came to me alone in my room. He looked 10 years older. "Ella," he began, his voice ragged. "Chelsea is devastated. She feels like you've rejected her completely. He's talking about leaving. I can't go back to how it was before." The silence. The emptiness. My heart ached for him, for his profound weakness. Then he proposed his solution. To make everything fair, to make everyone feel secure, we should have a family agreement. A contract. It will outline rules, responsibilities, rights. It's a bit formal, but it will show Chelsea you're willing to work with her. It will make her feel like this is a partnership. A contract? To live in my own home? It was absurd, insulting. But the pressure was unrelenting. The icy silences, the pointed comments from Chelsea about ungrateful children, the visible misery of my father. I was 15, drowning in grief and desperately craving the illusion of normalcy. Against every instinct screaming in my head, I agreed. A week later they presented me with the document. It was 10 pages of dense, single-space text. "It's all standard stuff," Chelsea said, her smile back in place but not reaching her eyes. "Chores, guest policies, quiet hours. Just so we're all on the same page." My dad hovered nervously. "It's just a formality, pumpkin. Sign it and we can put all this unpleasantness behind us." I should have taken it to Mr. Sterling. I was a child and the man I trusted most in the world was asking me to sign it. So with a sinking heart I scrawled my name on the signature line. I had just signed away my peace and nearly my future. Life under the domestic cohabitation agreement was a Orwellian nightmare. Chelsea appointed herself chief enforcer. The contract gave her boundless authority. Clause 2.3. All common areas must be kept to a standard of cleanliness determined solely by the adult members of the household. This meant if Chelsea decided a single crumb on the counter was a violation, it was. The punishments were always financial. Clause 5.1. Monetary penalties for contract breaches will be deducted from any allowance or other funds provided to the minor resident. I didn't receive an allowance, so the fines became a theoretical debt that Chelsea would ominously refer to as building up. I tried to retreat into my own world. Like my mother, I had an aptitude for technology. I started a small business, Alice Tech Fix, building custom gaming PCs and repairing laptops for kids at school. It was my escape, my connection to my mom. I was good at it, and soon I was making a decent amount of cash, which I kept in a locked metal box in my closet. It was my college fund, my freedom fund. One Tuesday evening, Chelsea cornered me as I was getting a glass of water. "Ella, we need to talk about the contract," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. Clause 4, subsection B. All income generated by any minor residing on the property is considered household income and must be pooled for the equitable benefit of the entire family. You need to hand over the money you've been making. I stared at her, disbelief turning to rage. You can't be serious. That's my money. From my business. It's black and white, she replied, her smile unwavering. It's to teach financial responsibility and the importance of contributing to the family unit. It's for your own good. I'm not giving you a dime, I spat out. The next afternoon I came home from school to find my bedroom door ajar. The lock on my metal box had been neatly pried open with a tool. The $3,200 I had saved was gone. I felt a wave of nausea. I stormed into the kitchen holding the violated box aloft. You thief! I screamed at Chelsea, who was calmly chopping vegetables. My dad jumped up from the table. Chelsea, what is this? He demanded, a flicker of his old self appearing. It's not theft, Mark, she said, not even looking up from her carrots. It's contract enforcement. She was in breach. I acted as the head of the household as per clause 5.4. If she continues to be non-compliant, we will have to escalate to clause 7. A cold, primal fear shot through me. I ran to my room, dug out my copy of the contract, and for the first time since signing it, I read it word for word. The language was deliberately complex, full of legal jargon designed to confuse and intimidate. And then I found it. The monster in the maze. Clause 7. Termination of tenancy and asset forfeiture. Asterisk upon a material breach of this agreement by the minor beneficiary, as determined by a majority vote of the Household Governing Committee, defined as the adult signatories of this agreement, the committee shall have the right to petition the appropriate courts for the following remedies. A. Termination of the beneficiary's tenancy rights. B. The appointment of the committee as financial conservators for the beneficiary's assets, including but not limited to real property held in trust until such time as the beneficiary is deemed by the court to have demonstrated sufficient maturity and responsibility, not to exceed the age of 25. They hadn't just wanted my pocket money. They wanted to put me in a legal conservatorship and take my house for 7 years. They wanted to own me. I confronted my dad that night in his studio, which now smelled of Chelsea's perfume instead of turpentine. I thrust the contract at him. Did you know? Did you know she put this in here? This is how she plans to steal my house. He looked away, his face a mask of shame and conflict. Ella, that clause. It's a worst-case scenario. It would never hold up in a real court. It's a way to make sure you toe the line. Just, please, for the love of God, just do what she says. Apologize. Give her what she wants. We can have a peaceful life again. Don't you want that? In that moment I saw him not as my weak father but as my adversary. He had chosen his side. He was willing to sacrifice my future, my mother's legacy, for a quiet dinner table. The following year was a silent, brutal Cold War. I became a specter in my own home. I moved my business entirely online, using an encrypted messaging app and a new bank account I opened with the help of a sympathetic friend's mother. I ate in my room, I came home late, I spoke in monosyllables. Every interaction was documented. I used my tech skills to my advantage. When Chelsea or her kids were out, I would access the home's central server, the one my mother had installed for her climate and security systems. I found logs, schedules, but I needed more. I started keeping a detailed digital journal, time-stamped and backed up to a secure cloud drive, noting every stolen item, every cruel comment, every arbitrary punishment. I was building a fortress of evidence. The final battle was triggered a week before my 18th birthday. Chelsea summoned me to the dining room table. She looked like a queen holding court, with Dean and Nora as her smug courtiers. My dad sat beside her, looking pale and nervous. Chelsea, I said, not sitting down. My birthday is next week. The trust dissolves. The house is mine. I want you all to make arrangements to move out within 60 days. Chelsea let out a laugh that was like shattering glass. Oh, you sweet, foolish child. You really think it's that simple? She slid a binder across the table. It was filled with printouts. This is a log of every single breach of contract you've committed over the past 2 years. Your refusal to contribute income is a major material breach. Your hostile and antisocial behavior is another. We've consulted with our lawyer. Next week, we will be filing a petition to have you declared a financially irresponsible minor and to have the property placed under our management until you're 25. You can, of course, continue to live here. Under our rules. I looked at my dad, a final, desperate appeal. Dad? Are you really going to let her do this? Are you going to let her use a piece of paper to evict me from my mother's house? He couldn't look at me. His voice was a broken whisper. Al, if you had just tried. If you had just accepted her. We could have been a family. You forced our hand. That was the final betrayal. The last thread snapped. A strange calm descended over me. You're right, I said quietly. It's not that simple. I walked to my room and returned with my laptop. I connected it to the large monitor in the living room. The room was silent except for the frantic beating of my own heart. My mom didn't just leave me a house, I began, my voice eerily calm. She left me Ether Solutions. She left me the servers, the code, the security protocols. Her security protocols. I clicked a few keys. The system she designed for this house didn't just monitor for break-ins. It was a full-spectrum awareness environment. Audio and video recording in every common area. The living room, the kitchen, the hallways, the dining room, has been running 24/7 since the day she died. It was her final gift. To protect me. She knew. Chelsea's face went from smug to ashen in a second. My dad stared at me, his mouth agape with horror. I have everything, Chelsea, I said, and I clicked play. The monitor sprang to life. It showed a high-definition, wide-angle view of the kitchen. The timestamp was from the day my money was stolen. We watched in silence as Chelsea, with a practiced ease, used a lock-picking set to open my box, a triumphant smirk on her face as she pocketed the thick stack of bills. I opened another file. This was an audio recording from the living room. Chelsea's voice was clear. Just be patient, Nora. The trust dissolves when she turns 18, but with this contract we'll have control. We'll force a sale. This mausoleum is worth a fortune. We'll buy a penthouse in the city, just the three of us. No more of Mark's moping or that little brat's attitude. I played a third clip, a phone call Chelsea had with her lawyer friend. The kid's a tech was like her mother, it's a problem. We need to make the contract airtight before she turns 18. Find a way to tie the asset forfeiture to something she can't fight. Maybe claim emotional instability, say the house is a trigger for her grief. For 10 minutes, I played a greatest hits compilation of her duplicity, her greed, her manipulation of my father. The evidence was irrefutable, damning. The contract is void, I stated, closing the laptop. It was signed under duress by a minor, and its creation was predicated on fraud and intended theft. I've already sent this entire archive to Mr. Sterling and to the police department. The charges are theft and attempted fraud by deception. The silence in the room was absolute. Chelsea looked like a statue of terror. Dean and Nora were pale and small. My dad buried his face in his hands and began to sob, great heaving sobs of utter ruin. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The police arrived within the hour. Chelsea was read her rights and taken away in handcuffs, her carefully constructed facade crumbling into hysterical pleas. Mr. Sterling arrived shortly after, his face grim. He assured me the contract was worthless and that Chelsea had no legal leg to stand on. To avoid a trial and a potential prison sentence, Chelsea took a plea deal. She was charged with grand theft and attempted fraud, receiving 5 years of probation, mandatory counseling, and was forced to make full restitution of the stolen money. The scandal destroyed her reputation in the local art scene. She left my dad immediately after the hearing. There was no dramatic goodbye. She just packed her gaudy things and her children and vanished from our lives. My dad was devastated. He moved into a small, bleak apartment on the other side of town. He calls me sometimes, his voice thick with regret and self-pity, begging for forgiveness. I listen, but I have nothing left to say. The man who was my father died long before that confrontation in the dining room. He just didn't know it. I am now 18. The house is truly, completely, silently mine. I walk through the halls that once echoed with my mother's laughter, then with Chelsea's vitriol, and now with a profound quiet. I've started removing every trace of Chelsea's influence, restoring the house to my mother's vision. I'm expanding my tech business and have been accepted into a top computer science program for the fall. The house is both a sanctuary and a monument. It holds the ghost of the family I lost, but it stands as a testament to my mother's foresight and my own resilience. I will never again let anyone make me sign away my rights, my home, or my soul.